So if you ever wondered how much a BMW depreciates in its first 5 years of ownership, stick around, you're going to find out. Welcome back to the channel, everybody. Mark with Exotic Car Place. Okay, so we're going to walk you through a few examples of some current BMWs that, well, now are about 5 years of age. So it's a great way to kind of gauge as to the overall depreciation. We're going to as well compare those different models with a Lexus and with a Ford. And we're also going to give you a kind of an idea what that percentage loss or depreciation looks like. Because every vehicle suffers depreciation as it ages for various reasons. Before we get into those examples, I'm going to share some of the reasoning why cars depreciate. So a bunch of accountants got together and decided we need to put some math behind this. And the mathematics came something like this. They looked at it and they said, the first year you lose about 20% of its value. The second year you lose about 10, the third 10, the fourth 10, and the fifth 10. So on average, most of the time, they would devalue to about 40% of its original value within the first 5 years. Depreciation comes in various forms, of course, and there's various reasons for it. Part of it was because there was a realization as a car, aged, after 3, 4, 5 years, new models came out with new technology. They were revised, they were updated, they were improved in every single way. So you had to come up with some sort of math to devalue the current models to improve on the desirability of purchasing new, whether it was a train or whether it was a car. So the first point that you have to consider, there's 3 major points to kind of the history on this. The first reason is that these cars, when they're first new, they are always more expensive than they're actually worth. Dealerships charge more on the MSRP than they are typically worth. This is not unusual for BMW, Mercedes, Ford, Chevy, Honda. Doesn't matter what it is. Every dealership has overhead. That overhead costs money. The dealerships have to operate. They have to pay for the lights and the coffee. They have to ship the vehicles from wherever the factory is. There are associated costs in getting that vehicle constructed to the dealership. They have to pay staff, and this all trickles down. The base vehicle isn't worth that, but unfortunately, all these costs go in and they have to get tacked on top. That's why you end up paying an inflated price. That's the first reason why you end up seeing a heavy depreciation, is because all that fat at the top end gets nullified shortly after the car is purchased new. The second reasoning for depreciation or heavy depreciation, and why some vehicles see more or less depreciation than others, and that is reputation and perception. If you drive and, typically you're shopping for a Honda, you would expect reliability, you would expect good value, you would expect certain things. There's always a perception there. Whether some of it's true or not is not really relevant, but there's that perception that carries forward. And so because that perception is there, people purchase the vehicle, they'll hold on to that vehicle longer, and when they sell it, they know people looking for the used car will pay a little bit more, knowing that they're buying a reliable car because the perception is such. The third major reason why you suffer depreciation on most cars today, of course, is because you're using it. But that's why you bought a car. You bought it to drive, to use it. So absolutely use it. But that works against you. That's just the law of diminishing returns. As you use a vehicle and you put more miles on it and you increase the wear and tear, you find it deteriorating not only in the way it looks, drives, and operates, but the value goes down as well. So the best thing that you can do is, number one, minimize the driving. Don't just spin circles and create all kinds of mileage. Use it as it was intended. But if you're using it, also take care of the wear and tear items. You want to make sure you maintain the vehicle properly. And when you eventually send that vehicle down the road and you want to sell it on the used car market, don't forget to share the service records with the new owner. That's going to go a long distance in terms of improving your depreciation value or reducing the depreciation, if you will. That's going to help your cause. So if you have good servicing and you've got records to show for it, that's going to help you. Now know that 15,000 kilometers is that tip over point. Less than 10,000 kilometers a year, you consider low mileage. And as such, people are willing to pay more for that car. if you exceed 15,000, say you start running 20 to 25,000 kilometers on your new car, that quickly devalues it and it becomes less desirable for a new owner. And as a result, you wind up basically giving that car away for a lot less money because you've got a lot more kilometers on it. Now, the flip side is you've used it. So that's not always for naught, but of course that's to be expected. Depreciation increases when you use the car and put more miles on it. So that's the three main reasons why these cars, BMWs and many other cars, suffer depreciation. But today we're going to talk about BMWs. So I'm going to give you several examples of different models in the BMW lineup that you can find today in the Auto Trader that are 5 years of age. These are all 2013 model years. And I'm going to compare that with their new MSRP price. We're going to divide the numbers and I'm going to give you a percentage depreciation that each vehicle, or the percentage value that each one held, if you will. And then we can compare them from one model to the next, as well as I'm going to compare it to a Lexus and a Ford, just so you have an idea. So let's get rolling on that, guys. So the first one is a 335, a 2013 335. Now the mileage, I'm being consistent with all these models, and they're going to range somewhere between 30 and 70,000 miles, with an average being around 50 to 60,000 miles are all the models that I'm going to select. So the first one is a 335. The 335, of course, we know is a popular one with the tuners. A lot of the younger drivers enjoy the 335s because of its sporting appeal. 3 Series cars are generally a lot more user-friendly and a lot more desirable. They're sportier cars, so therefore the value holds. And these numbers confirm all that. So I did a lot of searching on autotrader.com and found an average 335 goes for about $27,000. Now, realizing, of course, when they were new, the MSRP was around $46,000. Sometimes a bit more depending on M packages, all these extra packages you might add. Sometimes maybe a little bit less. But the average I found is $46,000 for MSRP. You divide that up and you have a number of 59% of its original value is retained with a 335 at 2013. So that's 5 years old. So let's move to the other end of the spectrum. How about a BMW 740i? That's the grand executive poobah. You know, a lot of guys, the big executives, like driving the big executive cars. Now, on the used car market, they become less desirable because how many teenagers do you know that want to drive a 740iL? Not a lot that I've ever seen. And that hurts. That really hampers the value of a 7 Series. Why? Because the people buying a 7 Series initially are typically rich executives. You know, the people that have the money on the front end either lease them and purchase them right out. And of course, they're very expensive cars, being more or less the flagship of the BMW lineup. So they're very expensive. But because nobody wants them on the used car market, and because they're very complex cars with potential maintenance-related issues, we see the value plummet on the 7 Series. They're one of the worst in the 7 Series for depreciation, hence better value, but more depreciation. And they average about $25,000 for a 2013 with similar mileage as the other ones. Now, with an original MSRP of $75,000, that means it's only retaining about 33% of its original value. Ouch. What can you say there? That's a lot of money wasted. So how about the 128? That is an average of $17,000 now on the used market. And originally MSRP was 35 plus, depending on how you outfitted it. And that results in a 49% retention value. Of course, that means that at least half of its value was held because it's a popular car. Again, it's a 1 Series, it's sporty, easy to sell. It was a lower original MSRP, so it holds better value. Then we talk about an X5 with a $27,000 average today and an original $55,000 MSRP means it also retains about a 49% original value, which means it's showing actually good retention on the X5s. Partially because who couldn't use an X5 or an SUV? I mean, they're always versatile. A lot of the northern states in Canada see a lot of winter, and of course, as a result, never hurts to have a nice, reliable SUV. Then we talk about the 550i, which is essentially similar level as an X5 and similar cost. And a 550 average we noticed at about $28,000 right now, the average in Auto Trader. But with an original MSRP of around $63,000, its retention percentage is about 44%. Not bad, better than the national average of about 40%, based on the original calculated values, which I explained earlier about the 20, 10, 10, 10, 10. It's actually better than the typical average. However, it's not as good as the X5, likely because it's a sedan, and again, more of a premium sedan. Not a lot of the secondhand owners are looking for a large 5 Series car to drive around in. How about an M3? Well, the M3s typically defy logic in a lot of ways. And why that is because it's driven more on passion than on common sense in a lot of ways. People buy the M cars because they want to drive a special car. Unfortunately, that comes with a cost. So the average that I found was ranged between $45,000 and $60,000, a very diverse range, primarily because of mileage. And I found the M cars were even more susceptible to high mileage. If you had a car with 100,000 miles, poof, the price went way down. If you had a car with 10,000 miles, the price retained very, very high. And when I say very, very high, the top end of the spectrum was very close after 5 years of its original MSRP. Go figure, they almost went up in value if you kept the car in great condition with low mileage. And so at $45,000 average over the $60,000 MSRP original, it retained on average 75% of its original value on average. That's unbelievable. You're almost getting your money back if you sell these cars on the used market. The M3s hold their value very well. And I would say a lot better than the M5s. The M3s, again, and I talked about that before, the 3 Series are generally smaller, sportier, and more desired by the youthful drivers. And as such, the prices and the values stay high on those cars. Now let's compare this to a garden variety Ford Taurus SHO. SHO is the top end Taurus. It's the turbocharged, the little hot rod Ford Taurus that wasn't really cheap when it was new. As a matter of fact, MSRP was over $40,000. But now I noticed on the Auto Trader, they're exchanging hands for anywhere from $17,000 to $20,000, puts the average around 17. So out of $42,000, it retains about 43% of its original value, which is strong, but obviously weaker than most of the premium, the more desirable BMWs. Yeah, it's better than the 7 Series and that, but it's not as good as the 335s, the X5s, or the M cars, of course. The cars that are a little more special, the SHO, even though it was a special car, was not as well received as some of the BMWs. How about this one, guys? You guys like the Lexus talk all the time. There's a lot of discussions out there about Lexus and how Lexus holds its value, about how great Lexus cars are, how reliable they are, and as a result, the prices stay high on the used cars. Well, I did a little research on that, folks. So I checked into the typical 2013 Lexus IS 350, and it's currently holding a very strong $25,000 US dollars on the used car market, which is a really solid number. So they are holding solid value. But at an MSRP originally of over $42,000, $43,000, that is a retention value of about whopping 60%. So in fact, it is very true that the Lexus holds a strong value with respect to a lot of other cars on the market. Now granted, it's lower than the M cars or the M3s, but it's pretty much in line with the 335s. As we mentioned, a 335 is also an enthusiast car because the younger drivers prefer to drive the hot rod turbocharged tunable cars like the 335. And so the 335s are typically holding similar value as the Lexus 335. So you'll notice very much consistent. They're both the 300 horsepower plus cars, both from the premium brands, and they're both holding very similar values in terms of, the new versus the used after 5 years ownership market. So very, very close, everybody. So in summary, by looking at this again, generally speaking, most BMWs exceed the national average of about 40%. The average car after 5 years of ownership devalues itself to about 40% of its original value. And as if you looked at the list, most of the BMWs I discussed today, which are almost one of every series, exceeds that 40% with the exception of, say, the 7 Series. Most BMWs actually do better than the average. So guys, I really hope you enjoyed that video. Thanks for coming out. Thanks for watching. Of course, again, as always, I'd love to hear from you guys in the comments section below. Make sure you drop a line. Don't forget to give it a thumbs up as well. Share with your friends, social media, and the likes as well. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button, the notification bell as well. It's going to let you know when the next video's out. And I can't wait to see you guys on the next one and what this great channel has got for you. So thanks again, everybody. Mark signing out with Exotic Car Play Place. See you soon. Bye-bye.